Nobody likes terrible stuff happening to kids, but sadly, the Myling is an entity that was formerly a normal human child. The Myling wanders in the night throughout Scandinavia, and these revenants are incredibly dangerous. There are a variety of ways that a human child could have come to their end, which led them to be consumed in the Myling curse, such as children lost in the woods to die from exposure, or even infants left out in the wild for death. In the old days, when poverty meant an imminent threat to survival, an extra mouth to feed could be the difference between life and death for a family. There was no real form of contraception back then, so unwanted pregnancies were common and could actually be deadly. It could bankrupt people without the means to raise, support, and feed the child. Deaths during childbirth were pretty common too. So leaving the young to die in the woods was actually a genuine choice some had to make to survive. For a large portion of history, the Scandinavians were Christian, so the people of those times had to follow a strict social contract. It was illegal to have a child without being married, and doing so could lead to social suicide or banishment. There was no separation from church and state. A bastard was considered an abomination and a walking blasphemy. So this is another reason why many bastard children were left to die to the elements in the wild. And there are even times when the child was much older than you would suspect, and maybe earlier they did have the means to take care of the child, but then later on when it got older, that means ended. So the ages of these Mylings could be anything from infants to anywhere around like 10 years old or so. Sadly, most of the children to perish in the wilderness in this manner were female because it was not only more profitable to have a boy for physical labor, but it was also an heir. So if one of these old-timey families could only afford to raise one child or maybe two, it wasn't uncommon for them to leave infant girls to die in the woods, then try again to have a baby boy instead. According to the Myling curse, these discarded souls would slowly cause dark energy to grow, which would form into a Myling. In all cases, the Myling is a restless, sometimes vengeful revenant that was once a child abandoned or killed in remote areas for either being unwanted, unable to be cared for, or straight up murdered by an ancient serial killer. In Finland, they're called the Utbird or the Itireko, which translates to that which is outside. And if you're Finnish, just ignore my horrible pronunciations. In any case, the unspoken secret family practice to commit child murder would be serious skeletons in the closet, and never mentioned to outsiders. Because though they may be choosing survival or bettering their social lot in life, murder was still murder. Even more disturbing is that this practice is still done in some cultures to this day, and at certain times in history, infanticide was practiced all over the world. According to the lore, because these children were never given proper burial rites, the Myling curse takes hold, and their spirits rise to become supernatural entities. Many seek vengeance against the living. The Myling haunt the area of their death or the area that they were given birth at. Their wails of sorrow mask their primordial rage as they are forced to wander endlessly, neither alive nor dead or unable to move on in peace. Common themes in Myling encounters are a lone traveler coming to contact with one in remote areas on the outskirts of towns or villages, but they are also encountered on desolate roads near dark woods or abandoned homes. The entity looks like the undead revenants they are, with a decayed, gaunt body. Their flesh is tight, wrinkled, and close to the bone, giving them a horrific skeletal appearance. Myling stalk the night, fueled with the pain of rejection and abandonment. The size of a Myling is far bigger than it was when it was alive, giving them a stunning, visually disproportionate creep factor, with sometimes the infant versions of the Myling being almost the size of a full-grown man. But despite its size, a Myling will creep around on its target with much better stealth than one would think it capable of. When the entity comes across a victim, It will jump on their back and embrace them in an unbreakable vice-like grip. Though, a Myling doesn't just kill their victims outright. In fact, there is even a way to survive an encounter with one. The Myling wants to be appropriately buried on consecrated earth. It does not necessarily seek to kill, more so to be allowed to rest from its waking nightmare of undeath. So after a Myling attaches itself to a victim, the only way to survive is to carry the entity to a crypt or graveyard. Hopefully there is consecrated earth nearby, because as the victim walks with it attached to their back, it steadily gets heavier as time goes by. If walking across mud or soft ground, the entity can get so heavy it can even cause the victim to sink into the ground. However, if the victim can get the Myling to a graveyard before dawn, it will let go and pass on into the spirit realms. If the victim cannot make it in time, they will either sink into the ground or be killed by the entity as it goes into a rage-fueled frenzy.